Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In the year 2008, the world crossed a significant threshold because for the first time, more people lived in cities than in rural areas. By 2050, more than 70% of the world's population will be living in urban areas, and the number of city dwellers is expected to almost double from 3.3 billion today to 6.4 billion in 2050. Despite occupying only 2% of the Earth's surface, cities consume about 75% of the planet's natural resources. The ecological footprint of cities impacts an area vastly beyond their boundaries, contributing significantly to biodiversity loss at the local and global levels. However, the growth of cities need not be viewed as a threat to biodiversity. The paradigm is changing, and cities increasingly can be seen as part of the solution to global biodiversity loss. The year 2008 also was a watershed year for the global movement on urban biodiversity conservation, because at a high-level segment of the 9th meeting of the Conference of Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, or the CBD, mayors from 4 cities, namely Bonn, Curitiba, Montreal, and Nagoya, addressed ministers and high-ranking government officials and presented the Bonn Call for Action, in which the mayors reaffirmed their commitment towards conserving urban biodiversity. This was significant in that it was the first time cities spoke at the highest level of a United Nations Environmental Convention. Recognizing the potential of cities to contribute to the biodiversity agenda, parties at the 10th meeting of the Conference of Parties of the CBD in October 2010 in Nagoya endorsed a plan of action which encouraged national governments to engage cities and local authorities in national biodiversity conservation strategies. The international framework and support are in place, and it is timely for most cities to share and to invest in ideas on conserving urban biodiversity, and in so doing, fulfill their sustainability objectives. One may ask if biodiversity even exists in cities. Well, based on what we see in Singapore, we dare say that it can. Despite being a dense city, Singapore enjoys a warm tropical climate that makes it a haven for biodiversity. We have a land area of 710 square kilometers, in which can be found 2,000 species of native vascular plants, 355 species of birds, 282 species of butterflies, and 57 mammal species. In fact, one of our 4 nature reserves, the Bukit Timah Nature Reserve, while it's only 163 hectares in size, yet it is home to more species of trees than the whole of the United Kingdom. Another of our nature reserves, the Sungai Buloh Wetland Reserve, serves as an important site for migratory birds along the East Asian-Australasian Flyway. We also have rich marine biodiversity. Dr. Daphne Futon, a world authority on sea anemones, said that Singapore has more than 50 species of sea anemones, which is more than what can be found in the entire west coast of North America. Well, land is expensive in cities, and we in Singapore are fully aware of that. What then do city dwellers stand to gain if some land is set aside for biodiversity conservation instead of for development? Well, biodiversity and greenery are known for their positive impact on health and ability to mitigate local climate change impacts. They reduce urban heat island effect, they reduce air pollution and stormwater runoff, and they provide shade and cool ambient temperatures. Mangroves along coastlines buffer cities' coasts against increased runoff from intense storms due to climate change. Enhancing urban greenery also makes economic sense. In New York City, the innovative redevelopment of the High Line has stimulated commercial and residential development in the surrounding areas. City officials have estimated that the development around the High Line will bring $400 billion in private investments and $900 million in revenues to the city over the next 30 years. But how do we create a biodiverse city? In his book, Biophilic Cities, Professor Tim Beatley describes a biophilic city as one that is biodiverse, a city full of nature, a place where the normal course of work, play, and life, residents feel and experience rich nature. There are many ways to enrich biodiversity in an urban area. Well, based on Singapore's experience, we have adopted a long-term and integrated approach in our land use planning. We strive to pursue economic vibrancy and at the same time provide a high-quality living environment for residents. It is through careful planning and optimizing land use that we are able to increase greenery cover in Singapore from 36% in 1986 to 47% in 2007. This 10% increase over 20 years took place despite the fact that the population grew from 2.7 million to 4.6 million people during that same 20-year period, which was a 68% growth in population. Our greening efforts started in the 1960s through the foresight and direction of the then Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. Today, we are evolving Singapore from a garden city to a city in a garden. We envision Singaporeans having a home within a garden instead of just having a garden outside a home. And this includes enriching biodiversity in our urban areas, which we will carry out in 3 ways. First, we will enhance the natural habitats by protecting biodiversity found in our nature reserves and by restoring degraded habitats through reforestation projects. Second, we will bring people closer to nature. We plan to develop a nationwide park connector network by 2015 that will span 300 kilometers island-wide. The park connector network will link green spaces and provide a wide spectrum of nature-based recreation for Singaporeans. The different loops within the park connector network will be ideal for sporting events such as cycling and marathons. And yet at the same time, residents can enjoy unique views of our natural landscapes and experience our rich biodiversity. Because we are land scarce, we believe that a park connector network will actually increase the recreational opportunities for the people who live here. Third, we will bring nature closer to people by reintroducing native species into our urban areas. We have been successful in increasing the number of some native species like dragonflies, butterflies, and birds. One good example is that of the oriental pied hornbill. This species was actually locally extinct for more than 100 years, but returned on their own due to our efforts to make our environment more conducive to them. And today, there are 100 of these birds in Singapore. In our efforts to infuse biodiversity into our urban environment, NParks also creates platforms to facilitate dialogue between stakeholders from different disciplines, to understand one another's perspectives, and to work together to develop practical and innovative solutions. It is important for us to take stock and to assess our progress from time to time. We, like several other like-minded cities worldwide, are using the Singapore Index on Cities Biodiversity as a monitoring tool to evaluate our biodiversity conservation effort. Dr. Lena Chan, also of NParks, will be talking more about this later. Let me conclude by stating that biodiversity is a key element of the livability and sustainability of cities. Singapore has shown that urbanization and biodiversity can coexist. In fact, I would say that we can even be mutually reinforcing. But this does not mean that it is easy. It takes planning, hard work, and collaboration among city authorities, among businesses, and most importantly, the entire community to address this multidisciplinary challenge. And I hope today's session will generate meaningful discussions on how cities can sustain a model of coexistence between development and urban biodiversity conservation. Thank you.